Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
I wanted to take just a minute on this podcast episode to tell you a little bit about the online course that we are offering now, the Bit Course 2.0, Understanding How and Why Bits Function. You can find it at the website, thebitcourse.com, which will be linked in the show notes. This is a very comprehensive course. We've got two different versions. There's a masterclass version where weekly we have live calls and go over the modules and the study guide. That course has been running 25 to 30 hours over the course of 7 weeks. If you take that version, you're also eligible to go through our BIT certification program and take that test. It's at no additional cost if you want to add consulting about bits to your repertoire of body work or whatever else you might be doing. We also will have an evergreen version that you can take anytime you work at your own pace. It is less expensive. It's also a lot less content. You don't have the weekly Zoom calls with me. Those are going about 2 to 2.5 hours each week. So the masterclass course winds up 25, 30 hours long. The evergreen course you're going to do in 12 to 15, something like that. So check it out. You can go to thebitcourse.com, sign up for the free newsletter. You'll get a 30-minute video on the foamy mouth and all of the implications of that, as well as 5 or 6 articles that I've written regarding bits. Get a feel for the content. This will absolutely be some of the best money and time you have ever spent on your horsemanship journey, I assure you. And it is not discipline specific. We cover just about every aspect of the horse world that you can think of. Our guest today is Miss Noche Miller. She is a positive reinforcement trainer with a practical twist. She is a rancher, a farm mom, and a farm wife. She is also the author of Understanding Horse Whorls, Cow Trick Training and How to Get Started. She has got a Guinness World Record for the most tricks performed by a cow in 1 minute. She also teaches online training classes with her cohorts through horsetricktraining101.com. We'll have links to all of that stuff in the show notes. Miss Noche, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Miss Noche, we do start everybody off with the lightning round questions to break the ice. These are for points and prizes, so you definitely want to be on your A game here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Morning or evening? Are you more of a morning person or a night owl or what?
Neither. Middle of the day. I want to sleep in late and I want to be in bed by 9:30.
Okay. How long is it right to dunk a cookie in milk?
Oh, they gotta get thoroughly soaked, but they can't be mushy. So it's got to be long enough for it to soak in all the way.
There's only like a 3
you don't want
second
them
window,
falling
right?
off into the milk. Yeah, it's a very, very precise timing there.
Exactly. What skill or technique do you not have with a horse that you admire in someone else and wish you did have? So this could be body work sort of stuff, training sort of stuff, just about anything is on the table here. Is there anything you want to get into that you haven't yet?
I'd have to say everything. I always want to know more about everything. I've all my life wanted to do more dressage, but I've ridden Western and everybody's like, well, you ride Western, so we can't teach you dressage. And I just want to learn. Just because I ride one way doesn't mean I don't want to ride another way. I'm starting my young horse in a Bosel, and I want to bring him up to a straight up bridle horse. And I would love to know more about all of that. I would love to know more about body work because it ties directly to whorls that I work with, the horse whorls, and the whorls on the body. If I knew more about body work, I could know more about the whorls and how they affect the horse and how it moves and every body part. I want to know everything, always.
What do you think is the most important quality to have to be a good horseman or horsewoman?
Wow, you're asking hard ones. I wouldn't say patience. I really don't have patience. And I think when you know what you're doing, you don't need to be patient. You need to be precise. You need to be able to recognize what it is you're looking for and give the release or the reward at the exact time. Maybe the ability to read, understand, and listen to the horse. Some people so completely can't do that.
That's very true. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer?
I'd say 7 or 8. I'm pretty good. I'm not great, but I can back a trailer.
Okay.
In high school, our barn was on a fairly busy highway, and it was an old milk barn. And you had to back off the highway, around the corner, down a hill, through the gate, and between the other trailers. And I had a little bitty Jeep Cherokee and a 2-horse trailer. So if you turned that wheel an inch too far either direction, it was going to jackknife and you were going to get stuck there and you were going to get hit on the highway. And that was a pretty good introduction. And now back in a gooseneck or a semi is easy. I mean, that's just nothing compared to a little short wheelbase trailer and pickup.
DIY or sub it out? Are you more take anything on and figure it out as you go, or make it someone else's problem and write them a check when it's done?
I'm tired. If it doesn't involve horses, I want someone else to do it for me.
Okay.
If it's horses, I'm going to do it myself, whatever it is. But yeah, if it's housework or vehicles, if I can't get my husband to do it, which might count as getting someone else to do it for me, but definitely sub it out.
I do notice that I always have a pretty long honey-do list, and my wife never has a honey-do list. So there's something to be said for that, right? Bay or sorrel? Do you have a particular favorite color? Sorrel? Okay.
Sorrel. I'm going with sorrel because sorrel is red based. So that includes chestnut. You may not be including that in your definition, but I include chestnut in that. And there's nothing more gorgeous than a dark liver chestnut in the fall when their mane goes all orange and they're really dark. But even if we just include sorrel, I've had some absolutely gorgeous sorrels, and I think it is the prettiest thing in the world.
Yeah, and you could go into roan or gray, or it's just what's your favorite color sort of a question. So
yes.
When you meet a set of twins, do you ever have the urge to tell them that at least one of them was unplanned?
Well, I didn't before, but now it would certainly be fun.
It's going to pop into your head next time. Yep. You and everybody listening to this. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Definitely dogs. I love dogs. We have cats, and they've always been very dog-like. They've never been the kind that go run and hide when people are there. They've been the kind that would go on trail rides with us. The kind, one time came home and found our cat sitting in the driveway talking to a raccoon. Like they weren't fighting, they were just hanging out visiting. So I like dog-like cats, but mostly I like my dogs.
Raccoons are pretty cat-like. If anybody's never had one as a pet, they're pretty cat-like. Pick one person to tolerate and everybody else will attack, that kind of stuff.
That would be interesting.
Do you
It'd be fun to try a raccoon for a pet?
Yes, ma'am. They have a tendency. I've had several friends that were into that, and they kind of have a tendency. If you don't handle them a lot, like every day, if you have to go out of town for 2 weeks, when you come back, they're wild. Like they go back to feral or wild real quick. And with age, they get to be a year old, kind of like a rooster. If you ever raise chickens, that rooster will be a pet when he's a cockerel, but then he gets fully mature and all of a sudden he starts attacking everybody. They can be kind of like that. So get them fixed, I guess is what I'm saying there. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Thick or thin crust?
Thick crust. Very thick and crispy and buttery.
Are you a cook? You like to cook?
I am not a good cook. I do a lot of cooking, and my family, they eat it because they don't have much other choice, but I'm not a good cook.
More an obligation thing than a pleasure, huh?
Well, we live a long way from town. If they want anything else, they're going to have a long walk.
Do you have a horse industry related pet peeve?
There's so many. How I don't know how anybody ever chooses just one. I think I would have to go with people blaming everybody else for their horse problems. We see it especially on the 4th of July as it's coming up. Everybody's like, oh, don't light off fireworks because my horse is going to be scared. When if we took responsibility and we knew this is coming, and so we went out and we started ahead of time getting our horses used to loud noises ourselves, it wouldn't be such a big deal. People who are afraid their horse is going to spook, don't pass me, don't ride up beside me, don't do all these things because my horse will be scared. If we take responsibility and teach our horses to accept these things, then we have more power. Responsibility is power. and we don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. We can take charge of it ourselves and solve the problem.
I like it. Yep, we did before 4th of July this year. I did a post of my son and I shooting skeet in the pasture, and the herd's all 50, 60 yards off to our side. Just no worries, no problems. I sleep good on the 4th of July and New Year's. It doesn't bother us at all.
Yeah, we started off lighting fireworks just outside the corrals during the daytime. Little kids, we light off the kid fireworks. And our horses were all at the gate, standing there looking at us, wanting to play.
Mm-hmm.
It's much better than having them running off through fences and scared.
Absolutely. Feral or spoiled? Which would you rather deal with?
Feral is certainly easier, but I don't mind spoiled. My boy, my main guy, Rusty, came to me absolutely spoiled rotten, and he taught me a lot. We learned so much trying to fix the problems with spoiled ones. I don't mind them. And so for ease, feral; for learning experience and the fun of the challenge, spoiled.
Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth. Those nuts in there are gross. They crunch. Ugh. It's got to be smooth. I have a very specific peanut butter type that I go after. It's made with honey, it's healthy, it's natural, no hydrogenated anything. And if they don't have that, I have a fit because I don't want crunchy. I want my honey. And most really good cookie recipes call for peanut butter.
It's not hard to make yourself, actually. You just have some peanuts in a blender, you're good to go.
The effort involved there.
What is your least favorite barn chore?
Yeah, I don't have a barn. My horses live out. They live out in the corrals. We have a cow barn that I'll bring them in occasionally if the blizzards are bad enough. But other than that, I don't have a barn. We don't bring them in to saddle up. We don't bring them in for anything. We have corrals. So I don't have a favorite or least favorite barn chore.
Do you have any favorite words of wisdom? Maybe a favorite saying or something like that?
Always take responsibility, encourage curiosity. That's all my life of training horses, no matter how I've been training. It's been encourage curiosity. Never punish them for trying to explore and see what's going on. Always let them think and check everything out around us.
I like that. Yes, ma'am. Would you tell us something unexpected about you?
Well, I think people who know me through trick training might be surprised about the horse whorl thing, and people who know me through horse whorls might be surprised about the trick training thing. But let's see, something everybody would be surprised by might be that my name isn't Noche. I'm not trying to hide who I am or anything, but I got on Facebook by accident. It was supposed to be a temporary thing. When my babies were little, a friend asked me to join her in a baby wearing challenge. They have those things where you tie babies on front or behind, and they're trying out different styles of tying a baby onto yourself every day. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I got on her throwaway account. Noche was her dog at the time. Miller is her maiden name. And I didn't see any reason to make an account in my name. I was just playing around on Facebook. But then I started doing the trick training, and then I was asked to join in with the trick training as an instructor with the trick training. And I stuck with Noche because, didn't make any difference and I already had it there. And then I wrote a book and I was like, well, what do I publish this as? Do I publish it as Noche or do I use my real name? And I was already on Facebook as Noche, so I stuck with Noche. And so I've got this, it got out of hand. And I've got this whole different persona, pen name. And I'm not telling what my real name is. but yes, it's not Noche.
Very good. I like the mystery. I feel like I know Buckethead's real identity. Are you a rock and roll fan at all? You know who Buckethead is? Where's the KFC bucket and the mask, and he's a guitar virtuoso. So, I mean, he just jams and, 10 people in the world know who he really is, that kind of thing. All right.
Yes.
Thoughts or feelings? Do you consider yourself more of a cerebral type of a person and everything's logic and reason and has a rhyme and a square peg in a square hole kind of a thing, or more go by your gut intuition and all that sort of stuff?
I like to think thoughts. I do have deep feelings, and if I'm not careful, I can have a really bad temper. But I like to think through my feelings and justify them logically and see if I feel that if that I can, that I'm allowed to have that feeling, if it's good and right and proper. So, thoughts.
What would you have been professionally if not a horsewoman?
I
And I
have
guess
no
you
idea.
have a couple of other professions here, so maybe I hesitated to ask it, but anyway.
Well, they're all still horse-based. I never wanted to do anything but horses, but they tell you growing up you can't make a living with horse stuff. So I just didn't want to make a living doing anything. I never tried. I never wanted to. At this point in life, I think it would have been a lot of fun to be a geneticist. I'm fascinated by horse color genetics. I'm probably not smart enough to figure that out, but it sure is interesting. I wanted to be a cowboy, but that's still horse related. And then I realized that I really was more into horsemanship than playing cowboy. And yeah, I've never wanted to do anything but horses.
Are you decisive or indecisive?
I am decisive. I'm very big on doing everything in the most efficient way possible. So I may sit and think through my decision. I need time to decide what I'm going to be decisive about.
Mhm.
It's like feelings. I need to sit and think with it and decide what the right way is going to be, the most efficient way, the best way to do things. But once I've made up my mind, I'm pretty, I stick with it unless presented with good reasons not to. And I'm willing to change, but mostly very decisive, except those times when I really need my husband to just tell me what's going to happen because I can't figure it out.
Do you have a favorite piece of tack or horse related tool?
I love my saddle. It was made special to fit my very short backed, very wide horse I had at the time. And apparently I have a type because it just fits all my horses nicely, very short back and wide. But I also love a treat bag. A good treat bag is an amazing training tool.
Cold showers or cold food forever? If you had to pick one, which way would you go?
Cold showers are one thing when you live where it never gets really cold. I love a cold shower up here in the summer, but when it's 0 degrees outside, that's just too much cold on top of cold. So I think I'd have to go with cold food because even steak can be good cold.
What is the best smell in the corral? Since you don't have a barn, what's your favorite livestock related smell, I guess?
Horses, just everything about horses. I even think horse poop smells good. I come in the house and my husband's like, "Oh, wow, you stink." And I'm like, "I smell like horses. What are you talking about? I smell good."
Sweet, salty, or spicy?
Maybe all at once. My favorite candy bar is spicy chocolate. So I don't like overly sweet. Like milk chocolate is just too cloying. But a nice dark chocolate is really good. So not overly sweet, but definitely spicy and salty.
Okay.
How can you choose the three best things in life?
Do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Triceratops. I like Triceratops. Their big shield thing they have going there behind the head.
I'm right there with you. Basically, the world's biggest bearded dragon, but with some horns, right? And have you ever had a UFO encounter?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, let me do a little tabulating of your score here. I've got you at 3,788 points, which makes you our highest scorer of all time. I believe you have broken the record and stolen the championship there. And that entitles you to either a genuine compliment or an awkward silence, your choice.
I will take awkward silence because nothing is more awkward than a compliment.
All right, that was satisfying. And just so that everybody out there knows, I actually record the silence. I don't just place a blank spot in the middle of the clip or whatever. You're actually listening to us just sitting here awkwardly for however long that was. And it is glorious.
I'm
Thank you for choosing that. That is absolutely my favorite every time somebody picks it. So,
I really enjoyed it. It was peaceful, very nice.
all right. Well, Noche, not your real name. Would you please give us the 30,000-foot view of what it is that you do?
Everything that I do. Well, I have many jobs, so it gets complicated. But I am an instructor with an online trick training course. We are based, well, worldwide. I work with two ladies in Australia and one lady who lives right next door to me, actually, the one whose dog was named Noche. And we help people. We are a gateway to positive reinforcement. We are not hardcore. We're just fun. We're a lot of fun. We help people reach a point where they can discuss and reach a point where they can communicate clearly with their horses. And tricks come across, people think tricks are silly and pointless. But in reality, we can use tricks to get around those spoiled horses, to get around the pathways in the brain that horses already know and are afraid of when there's bad reactions to something. Instead of trying to fix the problem by following that same pathway that has the bad reaction, we can completely rewire the brain by going around it and coming to the same conclusion by an alternate route, a detour. I fixed Rusty, my horse, came to me from a kill pen as a 3-year-old. He would just run over people. I mean, he didn't care how hard you hit him. I mean, I took him as a foster from a horse rescue that rescues Morgans. And they not advertised him. They were looking for a home for him with someone who knew how to work with problem horses because he obviously had so much trouble. And I took him because I could fix him, no problem. I'd started horses most of my life. I mean, I could solve a little pushiness, been there, done that. But when he got here, he was above and beyond anything I'd ever seen. I could not physically hit him hard enough. You know, you get the hands up and you whack on him, and he didn't care. He would just walk right over the top of you, and he was dangerous on the ground. And he bit, and every problem out there, he had it already. They taught him that by the time he hit 3. But he bit everything. And I was reading a blog of a lady I followed, and she was teaching her horse to fetch. They had some stall rest time, and to kill the time and keep the horse occupied, she was teaching her to fetch a frisbee. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, my horse bites. So why not teach him to bite on purpose? So I went looking for help on how to go about that exactly. I had a basic knowledge that positive reinforcement existed, but I didn't know how to do it. And that was what this lady had used to teach her horse to fetch. So I found the Horse Tricks Club and joined and learned about treat manners and rewarding the horse instead of punishing the horse. And my horse did learn to fetch. He loves to fetch. It's his favorite trick now. But he also learned how to walk quietly next to me. He learned not to run me over. He went from dangerous for an adult to handle on the ground to the one that I trust. Well, at the time, my kids were very little. The ones I trusted my little bitty kids with above and beyond anything else. So by teaching these silly tricks, we get fun things to do with our horses, things that we can teach when a horse is on stall rest, when a young horse, you can't start them too young. You can start them at any age. Things to do with a young horse that you're not riding with yet, things to do with an old horse that can't be ridden anymore. I mean, tricks in and of themselves are a lot of fun and they're wonderful, but they are also sorely underrated as a training device. So I teach tricks and I run my own cow herd. And with that cow herd, I have some pet cows in there that I teach tricks because I train tricks. It's what I do now. And I love to train everything. So yes, I've taught some of the cows, the beef cows, range cows in my herd, how to do tricks. I do have the Guinness World Record with the one cow. She's a lot of fun. I love playing with her, but she's still an old range cow. She's out there right now in pasture. She has a calf every year, goes into the herd, so she's still just a normal cow. And then on top of ranching and teaching everything tricks, I also like to look at horse whorls. It's old, long-standing tradition. People look at the whorls on the head to learn temperament. There's the whole avoid double whorls, they're crazy. Single whorls are perfect. All the things like that. So I look into those and try to dispel the myth, the bad reputation that double whorl horses have. They can be quite amazing, and we shouldn't judge a horse based on whorls like that. But above and beyond looking at the whorls to judge temperament, I like to look at the whorls across the whole body. When I was starting colts, I started to notice that when they had whorls that didn't match, I remember one horse with mismatched pectoral whorls, and he had trouble with leads. One horse named Wingnut, whose flank whorls, one of them came clear up over the back and the other one was just tiny. And he was named Wingnut because, well, he was slightly crazy. And he wanted to be good. He'd really try, but he'd constantly just catch himself, tuck his tail, and bolt. And so I started to realize that there was a strong connection between these body whorls and the way the horses move. So that is my current mission at the moment, is figuring out everything I can about whorls across the horse's body. And I think that covers most of what I do.
Why don't we'll kind of sort of start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us a little bit of your background, what was going on in your horse world before Rusty came into the picture, and why did you have any reason to be confident and figure you could sort this problem horse out without any trouble? What was your experience level already at that point?
Well, I've ridden horses my whole life. I mean, my mom used to put the car seat on the roof of the car, get on her horse bareback, come over and pick me up out of the car seat and go ride around. But then, kept riding. We did team pinning and trail riding and endurance and some jumping my whole life, just involved in every different aspect of the horse world. And when I was 19, I packed up, left home with my horse, moved out to Fort Robinson to work a summer job. And they let me bring my horse along, which was the main reason I went. So I moved 1,000 miles away from home for a summer job, and I never went home because I liked it out and about. I made some mistakes, as everyone does, but they ended up with me working on a ranch through my 20s, did ranch work, and started colts. And I mean, started everything from the spoiled babies raised at home to horses that were run in just like you would a cow and loaded in the stock trailer, and then you load them in the crowd and they've never been touched. So I've started a good bit of everything. I showed for, 2 years actually was all I showed for. I had a little gaited Morgan mare that I showed in the local ranch horse classes. We did cow horse and reining and cutting. And we beat the local good quarter horses very regularly. I won a couple buckles on her, won some best of show, judge's choice stuff. Great little mare, learned so much on her. And then I threw my back out. And it was a couple of years there that I couldn't ride. I couldn't do anything. And before I got back to showing again, ended up leaving the ranch. The ranch got sold, moved somewhere else, had a job in town. Thoroughly miserable because I train horses. I ride horses. It's what I do. So working in town was difficult. But then I met my husband and moved out to the farm and took a big break from training horses as I had babies and raised babies. And when I always had the horses never went away, but I had my good old quiet horses I had the mare that I used to show, and I had my old gelding that I worked the ranch on, but I wasn't training anything, and I was bored sick because, riding horses is fun, but I like to train them. So I was complaining about that to my mom one day. I was like, wow, I am so bored. These horses are great. I know they're perfect for where we are in life and what we need to do, but I'm bored. And Mom said, well, I wasn't going to tell you, but this horse rescue I follow has a 3-year-old Morgan that they need someone to foster immediately. So I volunteered, and I never thought I would get him, but I did. And that was Rusty. And I put all my old horse training skills to use on him to no effect. And he led me to where I am today. So there's like a complete 90-degree turn in my life right there that went from very traditional, normal training to weird. We just got weird.
So Rusty, I have to admit, I've done a little research on you and watched YouTube videos and stuff. So I was aware of Rusty, but I was expecting that Rusty was more a fear-based type of a horse from the descriptions, and then you said that he was actually extremely spoiled in the lightning round questions. So that was that was a little bit of a left turn for me. That wasn't the direction I was expecting that to come from. So how does a horse go from overloved, we'll say, to a kill pen? Do you have any idea of the background there, or?
Well, I found one lady on the internet who worked for the people who bred him, and she said that all their horses were just spoiled rotten. But they bred, what was it, Palomino to Palomino? I believe it was, for aiming for that Palomino or a Cremello, and they got the 25% chance of the sorrel. So they were breeding for color, didn't get that. A lot of horses with the very spoiling, permissive type of training that they did, or lack of training that they did, would still be okay. His personality type, his Whorls, if you will, is a horse that is going to be very pushy anyway. So when you take that temperament that is inclined already to be very, I hate to keep saying pushy, but he's not going to care about you. He's not scared of anything. He's not worried about anything. And you teach him to encourage those behaviors, then he is going to go above and beyond a normal horse when handled that same way. So I'd say the papers didn't get transferred. I do have his papers, but they did not get transferred since the owner. So they probably sold him to someone who couldn't handle him, who sold him, who somehow he ended up at auction, went to the kill pen. I know all the issues with kill pen horses. He cost $300. Nobody was making a fortune off of him. Say what you will. But the rescue that took him is a breed rescue, and they save Morgans. That's their goal. That's their mission. So it didn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're funding kill pens. They're going to save the Morgans. So yeah, and the pictures I've seen and the reports of him when he was at Sunnyside, he's running laps and running over people, and yeah, he was quite the horse. But no, in no way fear-based, and still absolutely not fear-based. There is no fear in him.
So what was, you said you were already following a lady who was doing the positive reinforcement stuff. Did you have any experience with that before, or was he you didn't dip your toe in the water, you jumped straight into the deep end with him, or how did that go for you?
Well, growing up, we didn't take riding lessons. We were at a barn on a farm. The horses lived in the pasture, and we rode as kids. We had a horse, we went out and we rode and we played. And mom fed the horses our whole lives. It never would have occurred to us there's any reason not to hand feed horses, because she expected good manners from the horses. We expected good manners from the horses, and we never had any problems. So I was never trained that it's bad to hand feed horses. Then as I got older, it just came naturally. I taught my horses all kinds of weird tricks in high school. The one horse I taught him to bite the horse next to us on cue. He was naturally pretty proud cut and steady. And so we went with his temperament, and I'd pull his head over and kind of aim at the horse, and he'd bite him, and I'd scratch him and tell him what a good boy he was. It never occurred to me that was a training style or anything weird. It was just what worked and what made sense. And then working on the ranch, the horse I had was brilliant. He was a very good cow horse, just very intelligent, period. And the cows were mean. They were not nice cows. They soured him really bad. They soured every horse really bad. They would hit you. They wouldn't even hesitate. I remember times standing on the other side of a board fence, the cow would come up and just hit it head on, trying to get to you. So we were pairing out during calving, calve in the corral, and then you take the pair out as they calve and kick them out in a bigger pasture. And the calf was laying down, and I could not get him up for anything. And I'm sitting up there trying, and I'm not going to get off my horse and try to get him to get off, because at least if I'm on the horse, he can run away from the cow faster than I can. So I'm up there whacking him with my reins and yelling, and my horse, I swear he looked back at me and rolled his eyes. He's like, ugh, come on. And he picked his foot up, put it on the calf, and shook the calf. And the calf jumped up and ran away. And I scratched him and I petted him and I told him what a good boy he was, and just spent a lot of time rewarding that, because he did good. It made sense. Why would we not reward the good thing? And it was really handy. That was a pretty great trick that he learned before I ever thought about teaching tricks. So I had encouraged it strongly enough after the first time that he was willing to do it again. And we got it on cue. So we'd ride up and I'd give the cue and he'd put his front foot out, put it on the calf and shake it. And I got it to where we could do it without the calf. And it was really fun. And it never occurred to me that I was teaching tricks. I was just training on my horse. And it never occurred to me I was using positive reinforcement. I was just doing the thing that naturally made my horse do the behavior again. So long before I'd ever heard of it as a training method, I was just doing it because it worked. But between babies, I'd had the first one and was not quite pregnant with the second yet. And I had a 3-year-old out of my good mare that I showed that I wanted to work with, but I couldn't really ride him. So I bought a book on positive reinforcement and we'd started playing with it just a little bit for the fun of it, see what happened. And then he got struck by lightning just as soon as I got him started riding. That was pretty sickening. But then I was pregnant again and then I was, busy. So I had heard of it. I had dallied in it just a little bit, but I had never really practiced it fully before Rusty.
And I guess this would be a good time. I have a little note right here, but positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Why don't we define some of those terms? And these are kind of all under the hat of operant conditioning. And I know some of the people listening to this will already know this, but I think it bears saying out loud because I definitely would say 90% of the time I hear these terms used, they're used incorrectly. So I'll give it to you. You go ahead and define them for everybody and I'll stay out of your way.
Well, the most important thing is that positive and negative is mathematical, not good or bad. So positive reinforcement means that we are adding something that reinforces the behavior, reinforces or encourages the behavior to happen again. So positive reinforcement is just adding a reward of some sort so that we increase the behavior. Negative reinforcement is removing something as a reward to increase the behavior. So in negative reinforcement, it's almost always pressure. So we touch the horse. When the horse moves away from pressure, we remove the pressure. That's the negative reward, the negative reinforcement. Positive punishment is adding punishment. That means, adding as in mathematical. And punishment does not have to be bad. Punishment is just stopping a behavior. We are adding something to stop a behavior. So if your horse is moving towards you, you put your hands up, the horse bumps into your hands, they stop, they go the other direction. That's positive punishment. If your horse is doing something you don't like and you whip them, that's also positive punishment. But it only actually works and qualifies as positive punishment if the behavior stops. If you don't put a stop to the behavior, is it actually positive punishment? I really enjoy pondering that sort of question. But just because we're using punishment doesn't mean it has to be bad. It can be, and we need to avoid getting to that point. But negative punishment is removing something to decrease the behavior. When my kids are bad, when they do something I don't want, I remove their access to computers to make them clean their room or brush their teeth or whatever. That is negative punishment. When my horses don't want to play with me, I put them back in the pasture. And that is negative punishment by removing the opportunities to have positive reinforcement. But in order to have positive reinforcement, we have to have negative punishment. In order to have negative reinforcement, we have to have positive punishment. That doesn't mean we're beating our horse in order to give release of pressure. It just means that we're applying the pressure in order to release it. Did that cover it?
Yeah, what some might call an aversive stimulus, and then there could be the fifth quadrant of extinction. We're not going to get into that at all.
Extinction can be avoided if we do it properly. Yes. And aversive. Yeah. So many people think, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is another favorite subject of mine. People think people in the positive reinforcement world think that positive punishment and an aversive has to be a bad thing. But We use contact when we're holding hands with our spouse and they're leading us along or we're leading them along. We use contact when we are dancing. There is no reason we can't use that same type of contact or positive punishment when we're guiding and working with our horses. Okay,
And
I'll shut
so,
up now.
well, no, I was just for the, so a lot of people might not understand that, or let me say it in the way I would tend to say
Yes, please.
it. An aversive could also be just that most of what we're going to do when we're riding a horse is negative reinforcement. So that means I put my leg on your side, you side pass to the left or something, and then I take my leg off. So that was the pressure. And the initial pressure that I put on the horse is the aversive stimulus. So most people would think of that word aversive has the connotation. It means that it's something the horse doesn't like, and thus they're motivated to get away from it. And that would be the thought process. But that's really more the connotation, the feeling of it. If in reality, if I put my leg on a horse and I do it in a way that causes them pain or too much discomfort, they're going to brace up against me and I'm going to be extremely ineffective in what I'm trying to do. So an aversive doesn't have to be completely unpleasant or anything like that. Just like you said, the pressure of holding hands with your spouse would fit the same category, just the way positive punishment doesn't have to be something that would churn your stomach. It just means that it makes a behavior less likely to reoccur. If your dog peed on the floor and you clap your hands real loud and go, no, that is also positive punishment because you added something, the noise, to make the behavior less likely to reoccur. And there are a lot of strong feelings out there about punishment, and almost always when I hear that, the person that has the strong feelings, as they elaborate on it, they're actually proving they don't understand what punishment really is. So, and I just wanted to make sure we kind of cleared that up. And so everybody, as we go through the conversation here, one of the really common problems with this is that people tend to use that word positive or the word negative to mean good and bad. And sometimes when you're talking about this subject, it can be really hard to kind of interject that meaning in here and make it very confusing. So just to be absolutely clear, again, all positive means is we add something, all negative means is we take something away. It's as simple as that.
So even if we're using contact in a very kind, gentle, I mean, if we're just barely touching the horse, that's still positive punishment if it is stopping them from, if we're asking them to move away from pressure, if we're stopping them from coming near us. It doesn't matter how kind it is. By definition, it is still positive punishment.
There you go. Yes, ma'am. And I also wanted to get into this to say that you are not, or at least as I understand it, you don't consider yourself a purist. So positive reinforcement is not the only tool in your toolbox, and you're not personally offended if you do something else or someone else goes about things a different way. Is that fair to say?
I am absolutely not a purist. I train with that dreaded cherry on top, as they say, as the purists call it. You know, we take the positive punishment and we add a cherry on top to make it slightly more appetitive to the horse. I do it because it's more effective. I mean, I have no problem with traditional punishment, if you will, based training. I like positive reinforcement because it's quicker, it's easier, and it gets the job done. As well as being, nice to my horse, if you will, if you want to cross over into the unicorn area of the horse world. But mostly it's just efficient. And I have absolutely no problem with adding contact with positive punishment. I mean, we can do everything in a way that is clear to our horse. And being clear to our horse and helping them to understand better and easier is what is kindest. So whatever works at the moment to help the horse best is what is best. We shouldn't get stuck in one training style and say, no, we're absolutely not going to use anything else. We need to have all the tools that are available to us.
Yeah. So I can appreciate that. Some of the purists I really have some troubles getting along with because they're just so, this is the only way. And if you don't do it this way, you're a cruel and inhumane human being and all of that stuff. But you also have people who are traditionalists who believe that there's no place in the world for positive reinforcement and then it's just spoiling a horse and all. And or a dog or whatever. And I don't think that's exactly correct either. There's some blending and some gray area, and all of the quadrants have pros and cons associated with them. They all have things that they're superior at, and they all have weaknesses and so forth. Like I'll say, if you come across a pure positive reinforcement trained dog or horse or whatever, there will likely be some behaviors that animal exhibits that nobody really cares for, but they're not willing to use the tool to end those behaviors. They're not going to ever punish them. The purist will say that if I don't reward that behavior, it will just gradually go away. And the words "I hope" are always left off of that sentence as they explain it, because it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes that animal dies with that same behavior in time, and even though he's 25, he still is doing the thing we never wanted him to do and never rewarded, but there it remains. The negative reinforcement animal trained by a purist could lose motivation, could get dull, could have those sorts of problems as well. So it's difficult to be a one trick.
It is difficult. The two things: the behavior that never goes away is being rewarded by something. We may not be giving them a food reward or petting them on the head, but they're getting some sort of behavioral, emotional, whatever reward from doing it. The dog that barks at the door, the person leaves eventually. So they were rewarded by that. So there probably is some sort of unintentional, very unintentional reward that's going on there. But mostly, I ride Morgans. I'm in a quarter horse world. There's nobody around here who has anything but quarter horses. So when they see one Morgan, they assume that that is how the whole breed is. I've run into people who are like, oh, your horse can't be a Morgan. I saw one Morgan one time and it was awful. So I just assume the whole breed is awful. I think the thing with positive reinforcement is that it's still very rare. So we might run into one person who does it and does it badly. So we assume the whole thing is bad. But we see lots and lots of quarter horses, and lots of them are bad. But we see enough good ones that we know that there's a little of each. We see lots of people who train with negative reinforcement, pressure and release, who do a good job. So when we run into the ones that do a really bad job, and there are lots of them out there, we don't think, oh, they're doing bad because they're using negative reinforcement. We think, oh, well, that person is doing a bad job at training. So yeah, positive reinforcement, the worst, the bad ones stand out more to us because we see so few of them.
So I would have to agree with that. I have run across a decent number of positive reinforcement people, and for the most part, it's not done well. And so they wind up and getting stuck in the mugging stage where the horse is looking at them like a vending machine, and there's no respect, and I've dealt with some that were flat out dangerous. And I fully agree that does not mean that positive reinforcement doesn't work. It means that positive reinforcement done poorly doesn't work.
Yes. So I've run into so many people who use negative reinforcement who it's a wonder they haven't been killed by the horses yet. I mean, it's very, very common out there. There's more bad riders than there are good riders, probably just in general in the horse world.
So since we brought up the ugly topic of mugging, what advice would you have for anybody that might want to get into this to keep them having 10 fingers when they're ending every lesson?
We can make this into the absolute safest training method there ever can be in the world. We can use protected contact, which is training the horse on the other side of a fence or gate so that you can step back. If your horse is biting at you, if your horse is getting too close, you can take all the space you need and keep them back there. That's how they train. I mean, they train lions and tigers and bears using positive reinforcement with protected contact. You can feed in a bucket on the ground. I've seen people who have rigged up a pipe, and you can drop the food in the top of the pipe, and it'll go down and drop in the bucket on the ground. And then you're not making any contact with this horse at all. And you can still train almost everything. 2 years ago, I started a yearling stud colt fresh off the range for a friend of mine. Halter trained him, got him to where he could be touched and handled. A big old draft cross guy. And I taught him to halter completely, standing on the outside of the fence. Not because I had to. I did work with him quite a bit inside, getting him used to being fed in a bucket to start with, because he's scared of people. He wasn't coming close. But I wanted to prove that you don't have to be in the pen with him. I can stand on this side of the gate with him on the other side of the gate and teach him anything I could in a round pen. So he learned to halter with me standing outside a fence, holding the halter up here, and he'd come put his nose in it. And the comments I had on that, wanting to know why I was so scared of my horse, why couldn't I get in there with him, were just amazing to me. People just could not grasp that it's not that I can't get in, it's that I don't need to. But yes, to hear mugging, sorry, he was fun. He was a bit of a tangent. But to hear mugging, to teach treat manners, I would definitely recommend standing outside a gate. Gloves are always good, just to be on the safe side if you're worried about fingers. But I would stand outside a gate and drop food in a bucket if you're really worried about being bit.
I'll bring up another just so we're already in this house. I'll stick with it. It seems to me that most of the people, at least in my experience, that are attracted to positive reinforcement also are kind of in the newbie camp. They're pretty new to horses and so forth. And I think that's part of why it does get a bad reputation, because they're a lot, they're new. They don't read horses well. Their timing isn't well developed, and they would make mistakes applying negative reinforcement as well for those same faults. So one of the things that I try to outline if I ever talk about positive reinforcement is that it is not an exemption from being a skilled horse person. If you do not have good timing, if you do not read the animal well, nothing saves you from that. Those are skills you have to develop the hard way. And if you don't have them, a price will be paid no matter what method of training you choose. So would you agree with that, or would you have anything to add?
Absolutely. People think that just because we're just hand feeding horses that they don't need to learn, that it's somehow magically going to work without lessons, just like you would get in every other type of training you're going to do. But yes, you need to learn how to do it properly. You need to learn how to pay attention to everything the horse is doing as you feed, not just when you give the marker. Clicker training, it's, you give a marker of some sort. It could be a click with a little clicky thing you hold in your hand. It could be a word. It could be a noise. But you give the marker and then give the reward. And the horse will do again whatever it is that you do. The goal is to get the horse to do again whatever they were doing when you clicked, gave the marker. But people need to learn things like it's not just when you click that you need to pay attention to. You need to be paying attention to exactly what they're doing when you hand feed, when you give them the food. There is a lot to learn, and you need lessons. No matter what you do with a horse, you need to learn how to do it well.
I'll say one of my pet peeves, and I know this episode will be coming out probably 6 episodes behind or something, but I just had a pretty lengthy discussion with Patrick King on horses biting people and all of that stuff. One of my absolute biggest pet peeves in this industry is when kids take riding lessons and a quote unquote professional gets them into the habit of giving the horse a damn treat out of their hand at the end of the ride. And it makes the little kid feel great, and they think they're bonding with the horse. But from a training perspective, the time is too far removed for that horse to actually connect anything with the treat being given. But the kids don't realize that, and that now they are in the habit of giving animals treats to make themselves feel good, and always at a stage where they don't actually read horses or know any of these things yet. And I've always felt that is one of the most dangerous and irresponsible things that we do in this industry. And I've had the unfortunate experience of being around and involved with some pretty severe bite cases. I've seen kids get hurt and bitten. I've never seen a kid get catastrophically bitten, but I've been there when there were some touch and go kind of things. The only people I've actually known that have been hurt by a horse bite, it's been 3 of them, and they were all adults, fortunately. So like that whole, to me, if you're going to be involved in positive reinforcement, and this would be true with a dog for that matter, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. I think the conversation about mugging and biting and kind of the downsides that can happen here if we don't use good technique. I think it's responsible or irresponsible to not bring that up and to not talk about it. Because again, positive reinforcement in and of itself is not bad, but it does have sort of this Achilles heel in that we're now adding food to 1,000-pound equation, and we can, you can have some very big respect issues brought about in that deal. I don't feel like I'm articulating what I'm trying to say very well, but what are your thoughts there? Do you have any similar experiences, or have you come across customers that had turned one dangerous and had to be fixed, or what?
My thought is that it's not the food that's the problem, it's the training that's the problem. We run into horses who bite and who will have that sort of trouble without any food involved. In fact, they're more likely when they haven't been trained to take food politely. When a horse has been taught good manners, which should be the foundation of any training program, I can hold food in my fingers, little pieces of food in my fingers like this, and hold them up to my horse, and he will very carefully lip around it and take the food out. And I mean, occasionally I have gotten like my finger between his teeth and I can feel him. He comes down, he can feel my finger in there, and that's not food, and they immediately let go and back off. So if we teach good treat manners, if we put in that good foundation, then we can have little kids. I have my little kids. They go out there and they give them food without any trouble. The horse that we have trouble with right now that is dangerous to take food is my son's 20-some-year-old mare. She's been trained very traditionally her whole life. I occasionally will give her a treat, and she comes over with her mouth bared, and she's excited, and she's going to get that, and I need to spend more time training her. But she's old, she's good at what she does. It's like, whatever, we're fine. So I haven't put any work into that. But it's the horses who aren't trained in how to take food properly that cause those sort of problems. And that is a problem. That's a big problem.
But that's 99.98% of them. It's kind of that's my pet peeve with the kids. If they think they're going to come to my barn and feed graham crackers to the horses in the pasture, they might miss some fingers when that's all said and done, because that's not a practice that we do. So just the notion that we should feed treats from our hand to any horse is poison as far as I'm concerned. Like if we have the whole bubble around it of the ifs, the caveats, the responsibilities, this horse is trained to a degree to understand this, now we can be safe with it. But if we walk up to any random horse in the world and we start feeding it things out of our hands, I'm nervous. I'm not a fan of that.
Should we give any random child in the world a cookie and have them feed any large horse? No, I don't think we should. Tiny fingers scare me half to death around horses. But I spent the first 30-some years of my life randomly feeding horses. And because I expected good manners, and because I knew the protocol and I knew what was safe and what wasn't, it's never been a problem, no matter if the horse, well, none of the horses knew the proper way to take treats. They just were expected to be well behaved. What the point of that was, I don't remember. Other than that, I don't think we can say that feeding treats is a problem. Behavior is a problem, even among horses who don't know how to take treats. We need well-behaved horses, and we need to take responsibility and know that we're the ones causing the trouble when they aren't well behaved, instead of blaming it on the horse or the food. But that can also be by not letting random people come out and feed our horses. I mean, that's taking responsibility and solving the problem.
So I guess here where I would have a little bit of conflict with that is the notion that all behaviors are derived from experiences with people. I mean, horses could be a blank slate and still have the notion they're going to bite you or kick at you out of fear or whatever. There isn't a fault necessarily involved with this horse acted this way. It could,
no,
you're dealing
not
with,
at all.
Yeah, young horses, and also I don't think that we can say that every behavior is the fault or result of something we have necessarily done.
Absolutely not. And I'm not meaning to say that at all.
Okay.
I'm just saying that hand feeding horses without good training can be done well and safely by people who have knowledge and experience. And that applies to everything with the horse. It can be done safely with knowledge and experience. If we don't, even if there's not a drop of food anywhere, if we walk out in the pasture and think we're going to pet a herd of horses, it's a really good way to get hurt. My kids are not allowed in the corral with the horses if I'm not there, because I know my horses. We have a very enthusiastic, friendly 3-year-old. He's a big baby. He doesn't know yet that he can hurt people and that he needs to have these manners. And we have Rusty, who is the boss, and everybody runs in fear of him. And if you're on the wrong side of a horse who's just trying to get away from him, you're going to get smashed, and it's dangerous without any food involved at all there. And actually, the one time Rusty has bit me, well, other than when I first started him and I got lots of little nips, but he bit me one time, and that had no food at all involved. I happened to reach to pet the horse, the neck of a horse that he hated, at the same time that he went to bite the horse. This was loose in the corral, and he got my finger as I touched the horse. And I have never seen such a look of horror and disgust on a horse in my life. He realized immediately. I mean, he did not bite all down hard, not all the way. He would have taken my finger off if he'd bit me the way he'd been meaning to bite the horse. But he closed his mouth. He realized that was my finger, not the other horse, and he spat it out immediately. It was just like, oh, what have I done? This is horrible. It hurt. It hurt really bad. But it didn't involve food. He wasn't thinking he was getting food. He was just being the boss and being the big jerk that he is.
You were just kind of wrong place, wrong time.
Definitely, 100%.
So would it be fair to say that if someone is wanting to begin positive reinforcement training with their horse, that they need to look at the aspect of the horse actually taking the food from them as part of the training and not simply as the reward? In other words, we have to, right at the start, establish some rules and boundaries for taking the food and not assume that's going to just go okay. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, we have lessons on that in the course about how to feed and what to do if your horse is mouthy, and yeah, all that. It's very important. It's the foundation that you build everything else on, and foundation in any type of training is so important. You got to get those little things on there in the beginning that may not seem like a big deal to the people who don't know what is going on, but actually make the whole thing work.
Very good. So you brought up protected contact. One of the things I wanted to mention here, like positive reinforcement kind of has a bit of a reputation in the horse world as being something new. And that's not at all true. This has been around for almost 100 years at this point. And it's actually been used with the protected contact specifically in a lot of zoo situations. So let's say we have a diabetic leopard that has to get a shot every morning. That's not something you just do. I mean, that has a real element of danger to it. So they've been using things like positive reinforcement to have that leopard learn to come to the fence and to have him distracted with this right here while we give the shot, and then there's the reward. And so those sorts of things have been implemented in that aspect for a long, long time. I've even seen hippopotamuses. If you're not aware, hippopotamus is one of what they call the big five, the most dangerous animals on the planet.
Oh yeah.
And they'll teach them to open their mouths so that they can inspect their teeth. And a hippopotamus bite is no joke. It can absolutely kill you. And so you're training one of the most dangerous animals in the world to open its mouth wide while you stick your hands in there and feel and wiggle on its teeth. So there is a real place for this stuff. It is a legitimate form of training. It's not new age woo-woo bullshit kind of. Yeah. Yes, I mean, it is a legitimate aspect for it. I would say it's probably the dominant thing going in the dog world right now, and the dog world tends to be kind of on the forefront and cutting edge of what animal behavioral conditioning, you might say, although that's not the right term. But like the horse world's always a little behind the dog world, maybe a decade or so, and then the cow world is 40 years behind. So I don't know if you know this about me, but this comes more from my wife's side, but we raise and show Brahman cattle. So we deal with cows as well, and halter breaking and all of that kind of stuff, which I thought was a nice segue into your venture with your cow and the Guinness World Record. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I got Ghost as a bottle calf, and she is, I assume, a Charolais cross. She's white, she's shiny. And so she really stood out in my herd of very pretty black cows. So from a baby, I started working with her, playing with her, halter training her, just to see if I could, to see what would happen. I enjoy training horses, and so I wanted to see what happened with a cow, branch out a bit. But my eventual goal was to ride her, and I would still like to do that, but it just doesn't really work out for us. She goes out to pasture in early June, so she's somewhere far away, and my whole herd is tame enough. I can't work with her in the pasture because everybody comes up and wants to be petted and get treats. And she is extremely bad about resource guarding, so she starts going around beating everybody up, chasing them away, and it's just dangerous to work with her when there's other cows around. And then they come home in the early winter, and I've got a month or two there when I can work with her before she gets too pregnant. So riding has not happened. But the tricks, yes, I use positive reinforcement to teach cow tricks. I'm not sure how you could ever round pin a cow. You could probably teach some pressure and release, but it's just so much easier with her to have her touch a target and use positive reinforcement. But she knows all kinds of tricks. She knows her colors. She can tell yellow from blue. I can hold a rope up and she'll come put her head in the rope. She can spin, stand on a pedestal. She'll stand up on my tree trunk that I use for the horses. She knows stay and bow. And I was teaching her numbers and letters last. And it's amazing what you can teach a cow. They learn really well. And I think because there's not the work involved with riding, they're more enthusiastic about it. With horses, we're usually very goal oriented. So it gets to be maybe not quite as fun for them. But with the cow, when there's nothing but playing and tricks, she loves every drop of it. I use the same training for the whole herd, maybe not with treats, although I do give most. There's a handful of pets and a handful that are just range cows that stay out on the edge and don't come in. But if you think about it, with cows, ranchers, just your normal everyday rancher, uses positive reinforcement regularly. Up here, we get blizzards, and you got to take the herd to a spot where there's shelter. And at least I assume most people do this. You put them up in the shelter with a hay bale and food. So they stay there because cows aren't smart and they will just wander out of shelter and then drift with the wind. So every time we take cows to shelter in a blizzard with food, we are using positive reinforcement. If you move your herd farmer style, you lead them with a bale of hay or with cake, you're using positive reinforcement to move your herd. We don't really, well, we still feed stuff in the winter, but not quite as the way we used to. On the ranch I worked on, the winter pasture was well over a section. It was big, it had big deep draws, and the cows had spread clear out in it, and they got cake every morning. So we'd go park in the middle of the pasture, honk the horn, and when the cows came in, they got cake. That's positive reinforcement. You're training them to come when called, using food as a reward. Nowadays, I use it whenever possible. I train them. I'm not sure what quadrant this would fall under, but last spring, when I was sorting off heavies, getting into calving, I pulled off all the heifers so I could have them up front to watch, and they got sorted into the tub. And then the gate was open that goes out through the chute, out to the corral. And I didn't push them. I didn't try to get them through the gate. I just left everything open. And on their own, they found the lane, they found the chute, and they went out into the corral, and they were rewarded by getting out of the tub, and they figured out how to go. Calving was horrible this year. We pulled like half the calves on the heifers, had a really bad bull. And every single heifer that I had to run in and pull a calf on, they ran in the tub, they ran right down the chute into the head catch, and it was no problem at all. That bit of training right there saved me so much time and trouble. I think we all should put a little more effort into that sort of thing. I know people do it, just run them through, let them know how it goes, what the way out is, how to get in the head catch. If we put more time and effort into training our cows, life would be 10 times easier.
It's a good bit of stockmanship right there for sure. And I completely agree with you. One of the things that's hardest on cows is the stress level of when we work them that one time a year. But if you just brought them up and dry worked them quarterly or monthly or a couple of weeks before you're going to do the actual work, the stress level on them comes down so much it's not even funny.
Yeah, it's huge. It is absolutely huge, the difference it makes. And then you cut out hot shots and all that kind of stuff. Things go smoother and easier and quieter.
Our sponsor for this episode is Rat Fink and Take It Attorneys at Law on behalf of the Society for Entomological Justice and Equality. The livestock industry as a whole has been battling horseflies, deer flies, and stable flies since well before the advent of insecticides. How many times have you saved your equine friend from an insect? Dozens? Hundreds? Just imagine emerging from a pupa and already having a target on your back, and people with PhDs and murderous intent are after you. You're out for a meal and something the relative size of a football stadium is trying to crush you or knock you from the sky. You think it's raining, but you've in fact just been poisoned by a man-made chemical that seeks to melt away your exoskeleton's protective layer or disrupt your entire nervous system. How would you feel about innocently laying your eggs in their preferred food source with another preferred food source nearby for the final developmental stages, and someone comes along and scoops up your eggs and hauls them far away from the livestock your children need to feed on to survive? What if a part of your life cycle required going into livestock as a host, and some jerk comes along with a paste dewormer, effectively ending your entire gene pool? Rat, Fink, and Take It Attorneys at Law are starting a massive class action lawsuit on behalf of the Society for Entomological Justice and Equality. You've tried to poison, murder, and traumatize every mosquito, housefly, and deer fly that has been around your property, horses, or family for years. We're now going to seek damages for death benefits, emotional cruelty, and physical impairment due to the reckless nature of the livestock industry as a whole. If you've ever reached back to swat that horsefly on your horse's rump, you're guilty. If you've ever bought, used, owned, or been on the property of a place that has used insecticides, you're guilty and you're going to pay. You think you've been saving for college funds and a newer, nicer living quarters trailer? You've just begun to fund the settlement to end the suffering and damages inflicted on the insects you so vainly call pests. You wouldn't put up with these actions being taken toward you and your family, and neither are we. So be on notice. We're coming for it all. We'll own your house, truck, and trailer. Life is a right, even for those with sick legs and multiple stages of development. You're guilty and you're going to pay. Rat, Fink, and Take It Attorneys at Law on behalf of the Society for Entomological Justice and Equality. Golly, that was a rough one. Well, everybody be warned. The insect people are coming for us now. So since we're talking about cows, let me just say, like the show cow world, it's always been disappointing to me. There's not much of an appreciation for training or anything. They kind of just drag them around, and I've always felt like they were just in the dark ages as far as halter breaking and that kind of stuff goes. And I've been treating the kids' cattle, what little I've fooled with them. I try to let it be mostly their project, but we've had some problem animals that I needed to intervene in and so forth, and using pressure and release and that kind of stuff with them. They've definitely shown that they've got the capacity to think and learn and be trainable just like any other animal. You've kind of found the same with the positive reinforcement there, I take it?
Definitely. Cattle are so ridiculously easy to halter train that there really should be no excuse to be out there dragging them around. And the whole Jersey flop thing isn't funny. It's just really not doing a good job. I've brought cows in from the herd. I just go out and I pick one, usually one that I know has a pretty good temperament. And I can halter train one that hasn't been touched in a week. I mean, without any force, without putting them in the head catch, putting a halter on and letting them drag a rope around. I can take them from dropping feed in a bucket so they get used to eating somewhere near me, to hand feeding, to letting them halter themselves pretty much in a week. And the leading is the same thing. You take a target, you let them follow it. I mean, by then they usually just want to follow you, period. But leading is simple and easy, and I have pulled on them because they need to know how to give to pressure. So, you go to the side and you pull a little bit to teach them to release to that with a click and a treat, that whole cherry on top thing. But yes, cows are very easy to train. and fun. It's fun to train them. Why wouldn't we want our cows to want to walk with us instead of dragging them along?
So you mentioned targeting there, and that for people who are familiar with positive reinforcement, that's usually kind of the inroad to everything. But why don't you expound on what targeting is and how it's used?
Targeting is the basis for pretty much everything. It's one of the first things we teach, right? Along with treat manners and taking food properly and politely. It's just touching something. Targeting is, well, with a horse, we'll usually hold something up in front of their nose and let them bump into it. They already understand by that point, hopefully, that a click and a reward means to do that again. Or maybe this is how we teach them that a click and reward means do it again. They've already got the basics down with treat manners, but then we hold this up, something. I have a tennis ball on the end of a curtain rod. We can use cones, we can use commercial store-bought targets, but we let them bump into it and then we click and reward. So they learn that their job is to touch this, usually with their nose. So then in order to teach them to lead, we hold it a little ways out in front of them and make them take a step to touch it, to target the object. And that's one of the easiest ways to teach leading. We can also target any body part. With the colt, the yearling feral stud colt that I taught to halter over a fence, he didn't want his ears touched, of course. I mean, he'd never been touched before in his life. So I taught him to target my hand with his ears. You know, you hold it up and they'll teach them slowly, by graduations, to bring their ear over and touch your hand. And when they are coming to you and touching, instead of you chasing them, trying to grab the ear, it doesn't come with the same level of fear. They have autonomy in this. They have a choice in the matter. So they are choosing to bring it over. And not only do they get a reward, but they're in control of how it's going to be touched. So yes, targeting with any body part is really an amazing and fun thing to teach and is the basis for almost every trick, from side passing to Spanish walk to kiss. All the little ones can be taught with targeting.
So I'll admit I've used positive reinforcement. I don't find this to be. I'm not a purist about it like some people are. That there's no place for it in horses and all. I actually, if I'm going to introduce it, I tend to introduce it on the bronchiest horses. So the ones that are really antisocial, really have a lot of fear issues. Typically, I have not found, like, this is a disagreement I have with most of the positive reinforcement world. The effect that I'm looking for from it, I do not find I get quickly. I will get kind of the small victories quickly, but that actual rewiring of the brain and kind of that general acceptance, and I'm no longer fearful and problematic and so forth, I generally want to have at least like a 2-month window to be sure I'm going to get that overarching mission accomplished. You'll have small victories in the beginning, but it's, in my experience, they can revert pretty quickly still at that point. I don't think it's the kind of thing where like you may get the halter on the calf in a week. That doesn't mean if you take him to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, you're good to go. He may still be trying to break away from, you don't have the whole thing solved in that short period of time. So my general rule of thumb is, if I'm going to start this with a horse, I want to know I've got at least 2 months where I can feel like I finish it, and I'm going to get there, and we're going to have kind of that rewiring, that different avenue done. I have found if I less time does not give me the effect I want. Kind of like laying a horse down, just because you did something once doesn't mean you're good to go. You don't have much reinforcement done at that point. The problem I have with it in general would be where the concept of feel comes in. Like with negative reinforcement, and I guess this is only true if we're talking about a purist view, but with negative reinforcement, it's very easy for me to have degrees of things. I could move over a little bit or a lot. I could go slow or I could go fast just by pressing a little more, pulling on the rein a little more, but I can do more or I can do less, and the response I'm going to get from my horse will be more or less. So I've got feel there. I can I can mitigate things. Whereas with a true positive reinforcement deal, we would have more of a button, and you press the button and then the horse responds with whatever they're programmed to respond. But you don't have a mechanism in there for those degrees, the speeding it up, the slowing it down, the asking for more, the asking for less. Am I wrong there? Am I missing something? Or is that where the being a little more practical and blending it all together comes into play, or what?
This is where I should have gotten a pencil to take notes, because that was a lot to remember and try to answer all of. For the very last part, the degrees, you get what you reward. You can shape it to be more or less or anywhere in the middle. So yes, you can build in any degree that you want in there. Let's see, just before that was, well, the one I remember from earlier was that you can't take him to the Houston Livestock Show within 2 months. Could you anyway with a really bronky, flighty, spooky horse? I mean, just because you're using a different method of training doesn't mean that you should automatically suddenly be able to do it. Everything is going to take time that we do with our horses.
Sure.
I think part of
well, I guess if I could just pause you there, I guess what I'm saying is that one of the statements that's always made with positive reinforcement is that it's so quick. And to me,
I made that statement.
Yeah. So, but you're not the only one. I mean, it's one of the things that's brought in to me. And I mean, there's plenty of research that backs this up too, but it is actually more efficient, I think would be the way to say it. If you counted actual minutes of training, you will get more done in fewer minutes with positive reinforcement than other methods. Negative reinforcement, by the way, is the least effective by a universe. Like it's way too abstract for animals. So that's one of the objections I always have with this flip side of the coin thing. The negative reinforcement part of it, you will never convince me that an animal actually grasps that concept. There may be a connotation or a feeling that's associated with it. Even teenagers take their phone away. It takes a long time of those sorts of things to happen before you get the effect. But
I didn't catch this until I was editing it, but I misspoke at this part in the podcast, so I wanted to add this in just for clarity. What I meant to say was negative punishment is the least effective in terms of the statistical analysis, objective testing of how effective these different modes are. So negative reinforcement is second behind positive reinforcement. Negative punishment is the least effective, and I think in an animal it's too abstract. I would say it's useless.
So positive reinforcement does, in the micro, it does happen quicker, but you have other problems like satiation and so forth, where that overarching motivation, where I have a reliable amount of control in any situation on this animal, it's never been my experience that happens quickly. That still takes a decent amount of time. And I don't care if we're talking about training dogs or ostriches or horses or whatever. When you bring the motivations and those outside concerns in there, the bond made by positive reinforcement or by negative reinforcement or anything else, it takes some trial by fire to solidify that stuff. You're not going to have that weak, when I say weak, I mean EEK, the 1 week connection thing is not going to survive the real world, even if you're using positive reinforcement. You're still going to have to be in a bubble, because when stallion comes up to the mare and she's in heat, that treat bag means jack. All of a sudden, it all is fixing to go out of the window, you know? So that's what I'm kind of saying when I'm talking about it takes a couple of months before the reinforcement is deep enough, so to speak, that we've got a real hold in here and some reliability with it. And I would completely agree that statement is absolutely true with negative reinforcement as well. I'm not saying different. What I'm simply saying is, I think the claim made with the positive reinforcement is is always said way too strongly. If you take that into the practical world, you're going to get bit, so to speak.
I haven't seen you train. I have to admit, I don't like to watch videos. I don't watch anything. I want to read. If I can do it, I want to read it. But I haven't seen you train. But I would guess that where you're using positive reinforcement, you're not taking a detour. You're not getting off the road and going clear miles around and back, that you're getting off on the shoulder and still scooting around towards the same goal. So you're not really getting off of the original pathway in the brain. So I would take a horse with a problem and start miles away before the problem arises and train a different direction. Instead of like, they're scared of the saddle. I wouldn't start out trying to reward them for getting the saddle on.
Sure.
I would start out rewarding for something that would seem completely unrelated. I teach my horses to go out around an object. Like I can stand on between two hay bales, or I can stand on the bumper of my pickup and a fence. But anyway, I stand up high on something, and I teach my horses to go around the thing and come walk underneath me and pick me up. So instead of trying to teach them to accept the saddle by putting the saddle up there and rewarding them, I would teach them to go around the pickup and walk underneath me. And that is the complete rewiring in a completely different direction. If you're using it to try to overcome a fear by, what would the proper word be? Desensitizing them to that fear, basically, then you're not really building new connections in the brain.
Yep. So that's not actually what I'm talking about. So let's say that we took a horse that's got a problem. Saddling, you mentioned saddling. So we saddle him, he bucks and he blows up and yada yada. So even if we don't worry about the saddle, we start with manners, eat out of my hand. Now I'm going to introduce a click. Here's a bridging signal that you get comfortable with. You start to learn that it's associated with food. Now we blend that into targeting and so forth. I guess what I'm saying is the overall effect of that animal learning how to learn. They understand that there's a cause and effect relationship here, and if they play the game, there's an outcome they can depend on, and they begin to trust you and all of that. I don't feel like, in my experience, it's not at all true that happens any quicker or appreciably quicker with positive reinforcement than it does with negative reinforcement. That you will get quick effects, but they're superficial. They're not deep. For that to become deep and really ingrained and truly trusted by the horse in no matter what kind of situations, that's not days or even weeks, that's months. And that
I agree.
That's part of what I'm saying is the notion that this is going to be super fast and you're going to take a dangerous horse and make him where 3-year-old children can crawl up his legs. If you think you're getting that done in a week because you have a treat bag on your hip, I have very bad news for you. And don't put your kids in danger with that whole notion, I guess is what I'm saying.
I agree completely. Any relationship, any meaningful relationship we're going to build is going to take time. When I was starting colts in a round pen, in 1 week, I could have a horse that was 95% of the time not going to buck when you got on. It doesn't matter what the horse is. It may be a day longer, a day shorter, but in 1 week, I could have your horse ready to ride. Could I do that with positive reinforcement? I honestly don't know. I'm working. I've got kids to take care of. I've got all these things to do. There's days I spend out fencing all day and I don't have a time to work with the horse. So the 3-year-old I'm starting under saddle right now, I've been working with for a year and a half now. But that means I'll work with him for a day or two, and then he gets turned out for a month. And then he gets worked with for a day or two and then turned out for a month. So I don't know if I could do this in a week and have him ready to go. But most of the problems that I come across and I solve aren't any slower. They definitely aren't any slower with positive reinforcement. And we do build that relationship. And my horses are like puppy dogs. It's bad having them here in the backyard because I step out the door, they hear that door shut, and they're out there calling, screaming and yelling like, hey, let's go play. I want to go play. And when I started horses under saddle traditionally, after that first couple days in the round pen, they didn't want caught. They were like, no, this was work. I don't want to do it. And the round pen worked really, really good. I'm not saying it doesn't. I mean, I made happy horses. They weren't mad other than getting used to working those first few days when they're like, no, this is work. I don't want to do it. They got used to it and they were happy to be caught. They were happy to work. They were safe. They were good horses most of the time. But there were those horses who were running around the round pen. They're like running on the bottom, running on the round pen, they're panicking, they're crashing into the fence, they're trying to jump the fence. And I would sit there working them thinking, what in the world? There's got to be a better way to do this. What am I missing? What am I doing wrong here? And this is it. I mean, if I had had this option, then if I'd had this knowledge, I could have applied it and saved us all those scratched up legs, the banging into the fence, all this trauma and upset that way of training was causing those horses. And we need to pay attention to the individual horse because some will take that just fine. Rusty could not be round pinned. It wasn't physically possible. He'd go around occasionally until he didn't want to. And then maybe I could have beat him hard enough with a whip to make him go. But I could not apply any reasonable level of pressure to him and make him listen. So yes, negative reinforcement, round pins, however you train, is great for most horses. But there are definitely ones that having those extra tools in your toolbox will make. I mean, I had Rusty for months trying and trying desperately to get him to not run me over, to be able to walk him on a lead rope without blisters on my hands through gloves. And absolutely nothing happened. We started positive reinforcement, and within a month, he's leading, walking quietly beside me. So there is a time and a place for everything. And I'm not sure where that started out at. But it's not always faster, no. But the relationship that you build, well, the relationship you build either way as a good horseman is pretty strong. It's about the relationship. I mean, you're not going to take any horse that you don't know into the breeding pen, into a big arena around other horses without that relationship and just expect them to do everything for you that they would with a person they were used to working with and they had established a means of clear communication with.
So that kind of brings us into the practical aspects of this. So let's say that you need a horse to go gather your cattle in the pasture. How does this fit in to that world? Are you still using a bridle? And let me just throw this out there too, because there are, I guess, the more purist positive reinforcement people. Some of them don't believe in ever putting a halter on a horse or a bridle, like they have to be loose, and there's a notion of consent. I'll get into that more with you in a minute. But how are you that way? Are you still putting a bridle on, or how are you going about that?
I have absolutely no problem with pressure. My horses work off leg cues. They give to the bit. My horses are bitless at the moment, not because I have any problem with bits. My son's 20-year-old mare came to us not having had a bit in it, and I'm not going to try to change her over to a bit at 20 something. I mean, we'll just go bitless. Rusty, I started in a plain old snaffle, single jointed snaffle, and he hated it. I touched the reins and he would disappear behind the vertical. There was no contact. It was terrible. I put him in a double jointed snaffle and suddenly I'd pick up the reins and I could feel his mouth. He'd meet me. It was wonderful. He did really good in that. But I got really sick of people saying that you need a stronger bit to control this horse. So I'm like, I've got this young, very hot horse. I'm going to go bitless and I'm going to, prove my point that it's the training, not the bit. So I got the most absolute bitless bridle there is. It's a hoop around his nose with a ring on each side. And I moved him into that. And now he looks like a quiet, well-behaved horse, which is the training, not the bit. But now he looks so well-behaved, nobody believes me that it's not just that he's a quiet horse.
And as a bit guy, I would definitely back up that statement. It's not the bit, it's the training. So
all the training.
Yeah, it's most of the time when people think they need a bigger bit, the bit's not what's going to solve that problem. And likewise, going bitless isn't going to solve that problem because the training is the problem, not the bitless, the bit, the what the hell ever the thing is going on there. So, okay, we were talking about practicality.
Yes, practicality. 100% the training, not the bit. But yes, I use a bridle. I use a saddle. Rusty doesn't always want to work. I do believe in consent to a degree. There is a time when there's a job that needs done, and horses can tell the difference between practice time, training time, and work. We don't insist that our horse has to be in a round pen to go out and do any work. We can spend the time training with the tool, and then we leave the tool behind and go get the job done. It's the same with food, only I don't leave the tool behind. I I give cookies. It makes me happy to give my horse cookies, and there's absolutely no reason not to when expecting good manners and all that kind of stuff. So when I get on my horse, he gets a cookie every single time, at least partially because we calve in the corrals and there is not one gate on this place that can be opened off a horse. So when I'm riding through pens, checking for sick calves and stuff, I have to get off and on every single gate. And if I want my horse to come pick me up I don't want to reach up and get the stirrup from the ground. That's a lot of work. I'm short. It's hard. So I stand on a feed bunk and my horse comes over and picks me up. He gets a cookie every single time to encourage him to continue to want to do this job that is hard work. When I'm pairing out, when we're calving in the corrals, you get moving the pair from the lot you calve into a different pair. He gets a cookie every time they go out the gate. Does he have to have that? No, absolutely not. I do it because I like to. It makes me happy. And because then it helps him to understand the job at hand. I was trying to move a pair where the mom was particularly grouchy. And I got off to climb over the gate and try to bug him from outside the fence and left Rusty stand there because he gets a cookie. Why would he not? I got over the fence and Rusty looked at me and then he looked at the pair and he went over and he got that calf up and he got the pair and he moved them through the gate. I'm like, wow, good job. So because I give him a cookie every time, he knows the goal here, not that most cow horses won't, but he knows the goal. He knows what's going on and he gets a reward for his hard work. Why should he not get a reward for his hard work? We act like it's some weird bad thing that our horses are getting some sort of reward. But I don't want to do a job if I don't get payment. So why not bring along the payment when we're doing the work?
So that blends us perfectly into the next couple of topics that I was going to come up with, and I do feel obligated to say that as I've gotten older and my left knee gives me more and more trouble, I'm a lot more apt to climb up on something or stand on a stump or whatever, and my horses also side pass over to me and pick me up without a cookie. So yes. There's a cue. I've taught them. They do it. I give scratches. On the withers, I'm pretty big on that. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about is the notion of resource guarding, rewarding. So the cookie doesn't necessarily have to be the reward. You can practice positive reinforcement without food at all, or adding the click in, which theoretically, yes, if you pair that enough times with the food reward, according to classical conditioning, so that's not the same as operant conditioning. That's a subconscious level of stuff. That's Pavlov and the dogs and the saliva. If you pair the food with the click enough times, then the click without the food neurochemically becomes the same thing as the food. So it's just like you put a cookie in his mouth with the click, even without the cookie. And
it is. And I know people who use positive reinforcement, and they'll click all the way through their time in the arena. And the horse doesn't get a cookie then, but then when they get out, they shovel their mouths full. It's a reward for the whole thing, but they clicked the times that the horse did what they wanted. If we do that enough, though, we lose the power of the click. So you do have to reward it at some point. But no, it absolutely does not have to be a cookie. My horse actually prefers scratches on his stomach this time of year. The bugs are down there chewing on him. And he has terrible scratch manners. He will come over, side pass in front of you, stand sideways in front of you and demand that you scratch his stomach. And yes, scratches can be every bit as rewarding. And when I was starting colts, I used that too. I taught them to side pass over to a gate, not using any rewards. And then you set on them off the gate for their first sit so that it wasn't some shock when you hop up there all of a sudden and they're not used to it. And then if they do get upset, you just stay on the gate and they can leave and it's fine and nobody gets bucked off. But yes, that was just with scratches and hanging out too. it definitely works without cookies or scratches.
So what about the notion of intervals within training? So like you could click and reward with every click. You could start to reward with, let's say, a food treat, just to keep this simple. You could start doing it every third click, or when the behavior was particularly good. So there are other ways to go about this that aren't just black and white 1-to-1 ratio type thing. So would you talk a little bit about that?
Well, personally, I wouldn't click and not reward. I would just not click. A variable rate of reinforcement, which will produce stronger behaviors than if we do click and reward every time. The variable rate of reinforcement is what casinos use when they're trying to get you to put more money in the machines. They reward you just often enough that you keep wanting to try harder to get that reward. So if we're trying to improve a behavior, we will click it, enough to make sure the horse knows that that is what we want. But then as we try to, okay, say Spanish walk, that's where they, step really big with the front legs. In the beginning, I'll reward any tiny little step in front. But then as I want more of the behavior, I will stop rewarding. And that will make them try harder and offer a bigger behavior, a bigger step. And then I'll reward that bigger step until they understand that that is what we're after. And then I'll stop rewarding that step until it gets bigger, or until we get 2 steps, one with each front foot. So you can build behaviors and get away from treating. You should build behaviors and get away from treating every single step of the way by gradually stepping back the amount that you feed. The click and reward, giving the food, starts out like being in kindergarten when you're being taught to read and you get rewarded by your teacher, good job, for every single letter. And that's how we start out our horses, with every single tiny little thing that they offer. And then once you know the letters, your teacher will tell you you're doing good for reading a whole word. And that's the same with the horses. We back off more and more until we get this big behavior, this whole big string of behaviors. If we don't back off, then we're stuck at that one thing, and the horse will never learn more. And if we do it too often, too long at that stage, they start to expect that, and they'll get mad and stop trying if we back off and try to wait for a bigger response, a bigger behavior.
So 2 things come to mind there. One is that's exactly the same process that you would have with negative reinforcement. So like with your notion of the Spanish walk, let's say that I'm doing that on the ground. I have a little dressage whip in my hand and I'm tapping the left front leg until he picks it up. And at first he just takes the weight off of it, and then he picks it up 2 or 3 inches, and I don't reward him by ceasing to tap until I get a bigger and a bigger and a bigger step. Maybe that process takes a month or something, but it would be exactly the same sort of process. We don't reward you for just saying the letter A anymore. Now you have to form a 3-letter word, and then a 5-letter word, and then a sentence, and then a paragraph, and we build on it. So the process
good
there
training is good training. It's
Yes,
all
ma'am.
should be the same process all the way through, and horses can be happy and do a good job with either one.
So that kind of brings me to the thought of developing a work ethic in a horse. Do you believe that exists, or is that a notion that you would argue against, or what?
I fully believe horses have work ethic. I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at here, but I ranch. I run cows. My horses are cow horses. Even without rewards, when they get out there, we want them to think for themselves. We want them to pay attention to the cow and understand what's going on. And any good horse, no matter how, some horses are cowboyed pretty hard. Most cowboys do a really good job with their horses, but some horses get treated pretty rough. And they still get out there and they know the job, they know how to do it, and they will turn back and get a calf on their own, basically, if we're passing something. So, I fully believe in work ethic, and I fully believe that horses can own their job, know what it is, know how to do it, and I don't think horses take pride in getting the job done, but whatever the horse equivalent of that is.
Oh, I would agree. That's an anthropomorphic term, I think. I would certainly agree with the work ethic notion. What I absolutely know is that we can develop that in a horse, and if we do things poorly, we can crush it. And so we are generally the ones responsible for how that develops. I would also say like as far as genetic goes, I've definitely seen some bloodlines that were born with more work ethic than some others. They wanted to please, and the sort of the golden retrievers versus the basset hounds, or however you want to categorize that with dogs.
Well,
So
if we were going to get into Whorls, I would say right brain versus left brain.
okay, well, we'll get to
We can
Whorls in a
skip
minute.
that for now.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's wrap up positive reinforcement, and then we'll get to Whorls. So, what about the notion of satiation? So, you cannot do positive reinforcement with a horse or a dog or whatever indefinitely. You cannot work that animal 12 hours straight. There still is a point at which they're fried. They've had all they can handle for right now. And there's a strong bit of research in the intervals, the smaller, let's say you work with a horse for one 60-minute break or 10 6-minute breaks. So cumulatively, we've got 60 minutes in there, but they will have a stronger reinforcement and understanding of the behavior with the shorter intervals than with the longer singular interval. That's definitively proven in research. So how do you handle this notion of satiation? They've had their food, stomach's full, they've had all the cookies they want, they're no longer motivated to perform like the seal bouncing the ball on their nose. I don't need any more fish, lady. I'm good. Leave me alone now. How do you handle that? Or avoid it, maybe?
I don't. I mean, my horses want to work. I will try to turn them out in the yard to graze. We don't have an arena. I have corrals I could work them in, but I need to get them away from the other horses because otherwise everybody comes and wants to work. So I bring them out in the yard, which, we've got, I don't even know how many acres there are here, but there's 2 houses, there's all the equipment, there's the hay. I mean, it's 10 acres, maybe at the least. And they're loose. I work most of them at liberty most of the time. Very seldom do I have anything on a lead rope. This time of year, there's grass they can go eat. There's hay bales out there they could go graze on, alfalfa hay that they don't get. And sometimes I'll bring them out and say, okay, you go eat grass. I'm going to finish getting ready. And they follow me around saying, no, let's do a thing. Come on, let's do a thing. But other than just that they enjoy the game so much, I have a friend who feeds 1 or 2 pellets, the tiny little bitty alfalfa pellets. She uses 1 or 2 of those as a reward. She's also like stick skinny, and I am obviously not. So I think that I just like food more than she does, and I like to give them a bigger reward. But we can give that tiny little bit of a reward. The training has nothing to do with them being hungry. Mine are on full 24-hour access to hay. They have grass that they could eat when they're out with me. It's not about being hungry. It's about enjoying the game and wanting to play.
So you never hit a point at which they're not interested in the treat anymore. If we worked on tricks for 3 hours solid, and I put
probably, but
5 gallons worth of cookies in you, yeah.
Yes, I would not work for 3 hours solid, but it's more personality and being tired of playing, or if I'm working on something hard. Rusty stresses really hard. He's a perfectionist. I know anthropomorphism, but I don't know how else to describe it. He is a perfectionist. He wants to get it right. He really is intense on his focus. And sometimes it stresses him out too much. And he's just like, I can't do this anymore, which shows me that I'm pushing too hard in my training and I need to back off and break it down more, explain it more clearly. But yes, shorter segments are good to a degree, and my horses beg to go longer. Very, very seldom do they say that we're done working and they want to go back. It's me who says, no, we got to quit here. I got to go. I got other things to do. If I'm working all day long, like if I got to go move cows or something, then they're not getting treats the whole time anyway. Most of the time they're walking on the buckle on a loose rein, doing their job, doing what they know they need to do. So if I were putting in a 3-hour period, it's not going to be all focused training. It's going to be short bursts of training with relaxing and chilling in between, and then another burst of training. Okay. But no, satiation is not an issue. They've never said, I don't want another cookie. They might say, I'm not interested in cookies and I would rather have my stomach scratched.
So we were talking about work ethic and satiation. You mentioned a little bit ago about this word consent. And this is honestly one of the words and the notions that I have some pretty strong feelings about. And I'm not saying that we don't want our horses consent, but to me, one of the significant determining factors of whether or not we really have a trained or what we might call a broke horse is where we don't necessarily need it. They're going to kind of go along with no matter what. And I hear that notion being kind of talked ugly about a lot these days. And I'm not just talking about the positive reinforcement community, but I live in a world where there are times when I need a horse. I need a reliable horse. It can't be that it's Tuesday and Jupiter's in the house of Saturn right now or something like that. And so I don't really feel like helping you pin the cows that are on the highway, Daniel. I'm like, you need to get in the damn trailer and we got to go now. Or you're part of the world, we have wildfires and things. And you may get that text message from the deal that, hey, like it's coming and you got about 20 minutes to get everything the hell out of there or whatever's left is gone. And so I really feel like that whole notion of I need my horse's consent is setting us up for catastrophic problems if and when. A lot of people are going to go through their world without that biting them on the butt. But to me, it's irresponsible to only work with that notion of consent. If I'm sounding like a hard ass here, if I asked my 12-year-old if he wants to go to school today, he's pretty much never going to school if I wait for his consent, right? That's just part of my responsibility as a parent to say, no, this is what you need to do, and you can like it or you cannot like it, but I have bad news for you. We're doing it either way. So that's my thoughts on consent. So what do you think about that?
I draw a hard line between work and getting the job done and times when we are training, when we're basically playing, when we're doing groundwork. So if I've got my horse at liberty in the yard, they can leave anytime they want. If they decide to leave, it's either because it's spring and there's grass and they want to go graze, in which case they don't get to. I mean, there's times when it's hard and we're not going to graze out there where they have this other option. But 10 months out of the year, we work out in the yard and they choose to stay with me completely at liberty. When they decide to leave, it tells me that I've been doing something wrong, that I'm pushing too hard, that they're not understanding what I'm asking. It's a very clear sign to me that I need to change my training. When we're working, he doesn't get to say no. I mean, they would very much of the time, choose to go back to the barn. Who wants to put in a hard day's work? But it's just like, say a stud, you put on a halter to go breed, you put on a different halter to go work. They can differentiate. They know the difference. They're going to get some say in the matter while we're working. I mean, cow horses are expected to think for themselves. I've always had a horse who will say, I think we should go get this cow over here when you're moving a big herd in a big area. And I say, no, I think we should go get this cow over here. And, the difference, it could be a quarter mile, half mile each way. So whichever one you do first could make a big difference in how much work you have to do, if you have to run back over here or go over there. So if he says, I think we should go over here, I'm going to listen to him. Fine. Once he's proven himself so many times, I'm going to say, yes, we'll listen to your ideas and your thoughts and let you make this decision. We'll go get the cow you think we should get. And he's usually right. So I believe fully in consent while we're doing things that are not serious work. When we are doing work, they understand the difference. And a horse may say, no, I don't want to. And I will say, yes, this is what we're doing right now. You got to do it. And say, fine, whatever. We'll go do it and sulk off to do the work that needs done. So yes, I do believe that if we listen to our horses and allow them to have say in what's going on, which is basically the same thing as consent, that we will get far more investment from them when the job does have to be done. It isn't that, oh, we're never going to do anything my horse doesn't want to do. It's that I am going to listen to you. I am going to allow you a say in this. And often you'll come up with better things and better ways of doing it than what I did, what I thought was going to be good. Which means, yes, they do have to get in the trailer when the time comes. But we will start ahead of time, allowing them to say no until they're comfortable and happy and will walk in the trailer on their own. We've been working on that this spring because I got a new trailer and they'll jump in the rickety, noisy old cow poop filled stock trailer happily. I got this shiny new horse trailer that doesn't make noise and it's so nice. And they all said, no, I don't think that's really a trailer. You're obviously trying to kill me. And so we spent a lot of time before the need arised. That's not the right word. Before the need arose, making sure that the answer was going to be yes. So yes, allowing the horses to have a say and working on the problem before the problem arises.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up the positive reinforcement stuff there, and we'll move into the Whorls now. So the world of Whorls, why don't you tell me about that? And I'll just be up front with you here. You could put me on the extreme end of the skeptical scale where it comes to this. I don't see any scientific reasons behind these connections that are being made. And I know there's been some research done that supposedly proves about whorls and stuff like that, but I'm still very much on the skeptical camp. So convince me, why do I need to be paying attention to hair patterns on the butt or forehead of a horse?
There's lots of studies out there, if you do a search, you'll find pages of studies on whorls. Everything from finding DNA that correlates to whorl placement and temperament to Temple Grandin running tons of cows through the chute and grading them depending on where their whorl is on how bad they fought in the chute. I mean, it's been studied. If it's out there, it's been studied. The thing that hasn't been studied is body whorls. That's fairly new. But temperament, whorls and temperament, I mean, it's been around forever. We've got the old gypsies, the old cowboys, any old horseman talking about avoid those double whorl horses. There's whorls like on the jowl here, and they're a sign of debt and ruin, and it's a horrible thing. And there's good luck whorls and bad luck whorls. And there's a lot of tradition and a lot of myths and old wives' tale. And
Yep.
but the difficult thing is
we used to bleed people with leeches and believe that phases of the moon dealt with, there's a whole lot of things that we believe that we now know had absolutely nothing to, had no basis in reality whatsoever. So,
and there's a lot of things that used to be myth that now are proven science. I remember an old, book, story, and TV episode of All Creatures Great and Small, where the pony was foundering terribly and they bled it to relieve the founder. Well, now they found reducing the iron in the blood, reducing the blood amount, because it has the iron, reduces the founder issues. So he had this old wives' tale that he tried as a last resort and it worked. And now we have reasons why it worked. So yes, there is stuff that's just silly. I know people who still cut calves by the moon phase. And we have stuff that we just didn't know why this was really a thing. And it's important to be skeptical. It's important to try to find the difference. I am the world's biggest skeptic on pretty much everything. Until it's been proven to me, I'm not going to believe one thing that you tell me, no matter what it is. But the whorls, yes, there's been lots of studies. And I do worry occasionally still because I'm a skeptic and because I want it to be right, because it is, not just because I said so. I still worry that people are only thinking that the thing I said about their horse is true because they want to and because I said it and put the idea in their head. I mean, it's really easy to go off down that track. But having been with these horses and having looked, I know that everybody has a different temperament. We all have our own personalities. Horses all have their own personalities. Cows, everything has their own very unique personality. So we can't just say that we only think they have a personality because we got told that this might be what the whorl means. I mean, so a double diagonal, it's a one high whorl, one low whorl, usually above the eyeballs. It's like, two sideways there. that one proves to me beyond all doubt that this is true because it is a thing. These horses are so unique and so different that it's not just us thinking that maybe it's a right brain introvert. It's a horse who is very still and very quiet, and they hold all their thoughts and feelings inside, but they're also extremely emotional and sensitive. And so while they've got that all bottled up inside, holding it within, and you think they're just fine and they're quiet. And then if you don't listen, if you don't notice that the stress is building, they will just explode. And it seems like it's out of nowhere. And that one is, I mean, people who have had those horses, it's so noticeable. It's so unique. There's no way that is just us planting ideas inside someone's head.
Okay, so what are the other, like we've got the single whorl dead center left and right in between the horse's eyeballs. That's supposed to be the steady Eddie, solid citizen sort of a horse. Is that correct?
It's supposed to be. That's the part where we need to separate myth from reality.
Okay, well, here's my whole thing. Like every whorl deal you could come up with, if we had 100 horses in a pen, I bet we could easily find the exception to the. I mean, I'm familiar with the two whorls and all, and here's the kid's horse in the lesson program that's supposed to be the bronc, and then here's what's supposed to be the steady Eddie, and that one's an idiot that'll kill you if a bird flies out of a tree. And I've just seen too many of the exceptions.
That's because you're going by the myths and the big, broad descriptions, like a single whorl is a steady Eddie. It's not. A single whorl is neutral. A single whorl means we can't see any extremes from the whorl. And so we need to look at the shape of the head for all these other things.
The shape of the head? Okay. So
what are the shape of the ears?
What's the stuff that goes beyond the myths? And let me say too, like there are people that go by these same things in people. Mm-hmm. So a certain mouth shape in a human and all. Like I don't believe that either. So I'm skeptical on every single aspect of this. So
I'm not particularly interested in people. It probably holds true, but they believe that we are profiling if we look at that. And I'm not interested in people. I'm only interested in horses. Yeah. So I'm not even going there.
So to me, like I would have no problem making fun of the chestnut mare deal and some of these other myths. But if I come across someone that really believes the chestnut mare thing, like we're going to not buy or buy based upon this, like I'm sorry, but I don't have time to get into that with you. Like I have other things, and the Whorls kind of fits the same deal. If it's an anecdotal, but if I'm going to go to a sale and I got a customer looking for a horse and they're going to spend $200,000 and we've already picked out this mare and we go to the sale and I don't like the Whorls, that isn't the deal breaker for me. You know, that's going to be just.
For me with head whorls, it would be because I don't want an introvert. I want an extrovert. I just know that I work better with this horse who has all their emotions out there for the world to see and very demonstrative of what they're feeling and thinking. And I only because I know that's what I work best with. So even though a horse with a very low whorl might be wonderful and might be quiet and might be great for somebody else, I know that it's not what I personally am looking for. So there is no good or bad whorl. There's just whorls that suit other people, different people better. I love my double whorls. I almost always end up with completely not on purpose double whorl horses.
Okay, so you're saying that there is a correlation with the whorls, that the whorls are based on DNA, and that the DNA is going to be it's going to have these characteristics with it, and the whorls just sort of the outward evidence. Like I would say, and I'll also say, I think the notion of introverted, extroverted horses, that's not something those are not terms I would use.
Everybody describes it differently. I'm not comfortable with energy, the flow of energy and that kind of stuff. I'm comfortable with very hard lines, introvert, extrovert, right brain, left brain. The way we describe it doesn't change what we see. It just is different words to use.
But like we could have the nurture nature conversation here. So like
Definitely.
Rusty is orphaned foal, raised in the backyard. That horse, no matter what color it is, no matter what breeding it's got, no matter what, is going to then exhibit certain personality traits because it was raised in the backyard, bottle fed, orphaned.
100%.
That's going to be more the extroverted horse, regardless of what a particular hair pattern might be, I would say.
That is the horse.
And I'm not trying to be
Oh no,
confrontational or
I'm more
disrespectful
than
here. I'm
happy to argue
playing,
this all
yeah.
day long. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's good to have discussions like this. Otherwise, how can we ever learn anything new if we don't talk about it? But the nature, what they're born with, is going to affect the way they respond to nurture. Most of the horses those people raise, they're breeders. I mean, Rusty isn't the only one they raised. Most of them were probably fine because their nature was to respond slightly differently to the nurture, and they weren't going to become these incredibly difficult, dangerous horses. They were just going to be pushy, and you beat on them a bit, and they back off. But because of his nature, he became twice as difficult. An extremely sensitive horse is not going to take the same the same way as an extremely not sensitive horse. I mean, you can't say there aren't sensitive and not sensitive horses.
No, see, like what you just said, that sentence, if we cut it out, I have no argument with it. I guess I have an argument with, I can look at a hair pattern on this horse and that defines that he's sensitive versus this other one that's not. That's a much more subjective.
You got any horses? You got any pictures of your horses?
Oh, I got
I
about,
mean, I could.
yeah.
It's just it is. It just is. A horse, as we look at a horse, if their whorl is high and to our right looking at them, they're going to be more sensitive. They're going to be more reactive. They're going to be all emotional and just like a nervous wreck if you're hard on them. On the opposite, if a horse is high and to our left looking at them, we're going to get, okay, so a high right is like a poet. A high left is a football jock. I mean, we're going to have a horse that doesn't care. He'll be your buddy, but he's not going to love you madly. He's going to be into everything, but he's not going to be scared of everything. It's just, it very much is. If you look at him, pay attention that way. I'm more than happy to look at any horse you got and tell you what they're going to be like. But okay, we can argue temperament, but whorls on the body. This is where there are bad whorls. This is where there isn't enough study in science. So pectoral whorls, above the front legs on the chest here. If you have one that's higher than the other, you're going to have a horse that's very imbalanced. They're going to lift the one leg higher and reach farther with it. They're going to weight the other leg heavier, and you're going to see high-low syndrome in the hooves. If you have horses with whorls, all horses have a whorl on their crest. If you have one where the whorl is back further, they're going to be softer to that side. They're going to move different from side to side. This is not, it's not, there's no question. Any horse you look at.
I would say there definitely is a question. Yes, ma'am. like the whole thing of if the mane flops to the right or to the left, that can be affected by the whorls. You can have the split rein where half of it's on the left, half there's a whorl in the middle where it swaps from this side to that side. I refuse to accept the notion that I should just not worry about this horse's right lead because his hair happens to be this way.
You shouldn't not worry about it. What you should do is know that there's going to be a problem with it, and you're going to have to put more time and effort into developing the not good lead. You should know that there is going to be issues through the entire body and that your hooves aren't going to be even. You should know that, well, okay, so one dressage horse a lady has lacked a whorl under his belly. Every horse has a whorl on either side of their belly button, under their belly. And those show where the hind legs are going to move to as they walk. If they're placed on the outside, the horse will swing in and step wide. If they're stepped really narrow, the horse is going to swing out and step narrow and like rope walk.
So
if
here's
they're
where
missing one of those.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, if they're missing one of those, you run into these huge difficulties where this leg is just like swinging wild. And when a horse feels imbalanced in their whole body, in their hind end, it affects the way they respond to everything. So you have a horse that's spooky, you have a horse that's reactive, not because this is where you get into horses who aren't living up to what their head whorl says, is if they have pain through their body, they're going to respond differently than if they aren't in pain. I mean, most behavior issues are pain related, especially if we can't find any clear training relation there, then it's pain related or a lack of balance and control of their body.
Okay, so like this is where I would, and I'm actually going to send an email and ask this question when I get done. I interviewed Jillian Higgins a little bit ago. She's a world-renowned anatomical expert.
Loved it.
So
one of the things that we learn in the anatomy stuff is there's more and more dissections. We're finding all kind of anomalies in the body of, like, this horse had a floating rib that it wasn't supposed to have, or sometimes there's an extra thoracic vertebra and a lower one minor lumbar vertebra, or the dorsal process of the lumbar vertebra is pointing the wrong direction. And this is something we've had with this horse his entire life. And that's happening at a much higher rate than you would think. That's the 1 in 1,000, and it's not. She said about 60% of horses have an anomaly.
Yes.
And so if we can't, even with all that we know, have a horse that we have ridden for 30 years and realize that that thing had ribs it wasn't supposed to have, I'm sorry, I just find the hair pattern to be so much more superficial than something like that. I don't know. Like, I will pay a little more attention, but I mean, to me, like, there's a point at which I paid a little bit of attention, and it just, I start looking at, most of my career, I'm riding like 20, 25 horses a day. So I don't have a shortage of animals to look at here, and I know them pretty intimately, and it just never has been a pattern in there I could pull out and put any consequence. I mean, it does remind me, you ever seen the movie Anchorman with Will Ferrell? That line,
it's been a while.
60% of the time it works every time. it's that kind of a thing to be like, okay, every once in a while you're right, but a whole bunch of the time
has
you're
a flank
not.
whorl. Every horse has a flank whorl. Every horse has pectoral whorls. How often do we even look? I've run into so many people who have no idea that their horse has a whorl on the neck under the mane. And they're all going to, but they don't know what's there. So when these things are so commonplace in our world that we don't even notice them, how do we know that we're not just completely overlooking them? And if we're not looking at them at all, then we're not looking to them to pay attention to what the differences are in them.
Well,
and they don't. With forehead whorls, there are no bad whorls. There's just different types of horses. With whorls on the body, there are whorls that are going to make a horse completely unsuitable for disciplines. I mean, I would love to look through reining horses and see how many of them fail because of they can't do the lead change or take one lead well, and see what the whorls look like on that body. I'm not saying it's going to be that way every single time, but so much of the time when these whorls aren't even, when the matched pairs aren't matched, it gives the horse such a drawback that they can't, they may be great for a trail horse, which doesn't mean that it's an easy job that any horse can do, but it's going to really handicap them in trying to succeed in careers where they're required to be perfectly even and good on each side.
Do you have any concern that if someone really did take this seriously, that it can lead to, this is too strong of a word, but it's too funny not to say, bigotry in the horse world? So now I hate Palominos, but this one has got, these kinds of whorls, or what, like, to me, this is the opposite of take every horse as an individual. And now we're going to categorize them into this certain group because of some anomaly that they have absolutely nothing to, like if you could definitively say that a whorl here is anatomically correlated with this thing and that's the reason, then I guess at some point I could concede. And if we had like an 80% rate of that or something, but I'm unaware of any kind of research that has proven that. Some of the temperament stuff, even like, I read a whole lot of research, and most research is a whole lot less definitive than what people represent it as being. If you actually go read the paper, then you can say, well, this is what they did, but these variables weren't taken into account at all, or this could have happened, and so forth. And that was the other thing.
100% that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a lot harder to definitively say something like that. I don't know. I guess I've never seen it. I would be interested to read your book, because maybe most of the knowledge I have here is the anecdotal myth stuff.
So, and I think that is where the prejudice comes in, is the myths. Double whorls are bad. Well, double whorls aren't bad. They're just different. And that's where, when people look at the whorl and don't buy the horse because of it, it is a problem. It's a major problem. I'm not saying that there aren't people who don't get along with double whorls and that they shouldn't look and see that the horse has a double and so they should avoid it. I support that 100%. But to just say blanket statement, double whorls are bad, they're all crazy. That's absolutely beyond wrong. And we need to take the deeper understanding that with twice the whorls, you get twice the horse. They're probably going to be twice as smart. And yes, they're going to have their idiosyncrasies and they're going to be more complicated. They're going to take things that you could get away with on most single whorl horses. You're probably not going on a double whorl. They're going to give you a hard time. They're going to demand that you step up in your training. And the people who aren't capable.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're kind of saying that the forehead whorls aren't that important or aren't that definitive, but a flank whorl or a pectoral whorl is very indicative of athletic ability.
Well, because different temperaments, different personalities, we all get along with different personality types. I mean,
sure.
I'm an introvert. I can't stand extreme extroverts who want to talk all the time and be there in my face. I need my space. And it's no different with horses. There's going to be different personality types that different people are going to get along with. That's fine. That just means they need different people. The difference with body whorls is that it's going to show how that horse moves. And yes, the horses that move different can get along in different disciplines and with different people and level of training they're going to put into them. Big whorls down the chest show a horse who is going to have a weak thoracic sling. They're predisposed. I'm not saying they're going to have to, but they're predisposed to a weak thoracic sling. They're going to be downhill. They're going to have heavy muscling along the base of their neck. They're going to want to carry their head high and beat you necked and hollow. So with someone who gets on and wants to yank their horse around and just ride, that horse is going to be heavy on the forehand and they're going to be more clumsy. They're going to, all the bad things that could come with that. If you get someone who gets on and is going to build those muscles up, teach them how to lift and raise the thoracic sling, teach them how to round their back, lower their head, and come onto the bit, then that person is going to have a different result with this horse with the big feathering down the front of the neck and into the chest. So you get the same result, but different training and input can change the end effect of it. I would hard on that one.
No, I mean, I'm respectfully, I'm still very skeptical. The notion that has any correlation, I find very, very unlikely.
Crushed velvet.
But that's
you know what crushed velvet is? It's where the hair grows, puzzle coat, whatever you want to call it, where the hair grows all different directions for people who don't know what it is. Like it's usually on the neck and some hair will go front and back and it looks really weird. That is most of the time it is caused by the fascia under the skin. Everything is fascia. I mean, so it tightens, it gets sore, whatever, and it pulls the hair different directions. And when you take care of the allergies or the soreness or whatever is causing the fascia to be tight, the crushed velvet will usually go away. There are horses who are born with it and it will be there forever. There's more than one cause. But when it comes and goes, it is fascia. And the fascia is changing the way the hair works. I am desperate to get to a dissection or at least one of those classes where they do it you can watch it on the internet and see what exactly is going under the whorls. I fully believe that it is either an adhesion where it causes the fascia to be tighter or a weak spot in the fascia where it is allowing the muscle to bulge and be weaker under the whorl, depending on which type of whorl it is.
So here would be my thought on that. If let's say that what you just speculated on is true, that some sort of a fascia anomaly, whatever it might be, in utero determines a whorl will be here.
Mm-hmm.
We can manipulate fascia and things like that. So body work and that kind of stuff. So that horse, that kind of gets into the nature aspect of it again. Is that really something superficial or is that actually determinant of something?
Well, I believe some of them we can change. Like with crushed velvet, where it comes and goes, we can change that. But in some spots, I'm not sure if it's the fascia or the muscle. If it is the fascia, it's affecting the muscle. I believe it is fascia. And fascia can squeeze that muscle so tight that it can't move properly. So if the horse is born that way, we're only going to be able to loosen it up so much. We can affect it, we can help it, but we're not going to be able to make it go away like we can with crushed velvet. And animals will develop whorls, like full on whorls over the top of tumors and cancer, things like that. Like it'll be perfectly flat and then they'll have the full circular whorl, not feathering and not the crushed velvet, that will develop with a problem under the skin.
Well, like I would be open. The skin is the largest organ on the body. It certainly has correlations to things that are going on physiologically with the horse. I definitely would not argue that. You could, I mean,
And the
you can
fascia is
diagnose
between the
cancer
skin
in
and the
people
muscle.
off of certain rashes and stuff, right?
Yes.
So I'm definitely not saying there's no physiological or anatomical correlation with the skin and all. I don't know. I guess I'm just skeptical, but that's okay.
Skeptical is good. It's if we accepted every single thing that was put in front of us, think of the things we believe. I mean, seriously, it's good to be skeptical, but it's also good to be open-minded. And fascia encases every muscle. It's between the skin and the muscle. It goes into the organs. It covers every organ. Fascia is everything. And it does affect the hair growth. We see with crushed velvet how fascia can make the hair growth change. I've seen horses who are prone to founder as they're coming into a laminitic episode. They'll get like a line in the hair down the front of the pastern, right? Pastern. And it'll spread as they're coming into pain and then go away when that horse is out of that episode and doing good again.
Okay. Well, is there anything about Whorls that you would like to leave us on? And I won't challenge you, or I'll give you the floor. And if there's a whorl mystery you want to present or solve or advice or anything like that, now's the time.
I think we've pretty well covered it with a wonderful discussion. I love hearing the devil's advocate and the other point of view. But don't follow the old myth. There is no all good or all bad. We need to look more closely at these things. We need to pay attention and we need to look for the good in it instead of just saying something is bad. Oh, this is bad. We need to figure out why it's bad and how we can help it to get better. The old folklore, my favorite one is the cheeks. It's a sign of debt and ruin. Well, if we see a whorl on the cheek, that horse is more likely to have teeth issues. They're going to have wave mouth or some sort of tooth issues. It's also set right over the nerves that go to the TMJ. Those horses are said to they'll store tension up. And then if we don't find a way to release the tension, they can explode. So if we look at the old lore, bad luck, debt, and ruin, and we look at the things we know about it, we can see that having bad teeth will cause a horse to not carry weight and not be able to get a full day's work done. We can see that if they tend to like blow up once in a while, it's going to cause trouble if you're depending on them to get your daily work done, and how it could lead to debt and ruin. So there is no actual bad luck and good luck. That sort of thing drives me absolutely crazy. What there is science and ways that these whorls affect the temperament or the body that lead people to notice good and bad things happening when the horse has the whorls.
Okay. Well, I will. I'll pay a little bit more attention and kind of see if I start some patterns emerge. Is there anything to clockwise or counterclockwise or any of that kind of stuff? Or
there's supposed to be. I don't look at it. That's where everybody sees the study, that if it's clockwise, they're supposed to spook one direction. If it's counterclockwise, they're supposed to spook the other. I could never see any value in paying attention to that. What I would do is post pictures of your horses to my whorl page, and I will give you an analysis, and you can see if anything matches. The Equine Swirl Whorl study is there for anybody to post pictures to, and I try to get to every one of them. And
is that a Facebook group or a website?
That is on Facebook. Equine Swirl Study on Facebook.
Okay. And we'll have a link to all of her websites, YouTube channel, all of that stuff. I'll do a special one to the cow world record video. If you like that, y'all can watch the cow do the tricks and everything. And thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.